Book 2, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for an update. Now, I don't know when my last update was, but at least this time I will have a little bit more to say to you guys than I did last time. So I finished The Lost Metal, which is the 4th book in the Wax and Wayne series. I had really fun with that series. It was really funny, and I could see where like characters like Wayne would get annoying after a while. His humor and everything, and some of his quirks are just not always appealing. Although I think sometimes it's the other way around, where people don't like Wax, but they like Wayne because he's funny and fun. And Wax can be kind of uptight and very serious. But I like their banter. I actually like the magic system. I know a lot of people, don't like when magic is treated like a science. And that's what it definitely felt like, a science. But I had no problem with it. I personally liked that. I think that was really cool. But I don't mind soft magic systems either. Soft magic systems can be very fun, too. So I personally am in the middle, where I like both types of magic systems. But I had fun with that series. It was a great ending. It had a bittersweetness, is all I'm gonna say, with the ending. And it was fun. So, I also finished this one. I'm gonna butcher it, but the title's Kusamakura by Natsumi Soseki. This is my second book by the author. I'm really liking the author and his work and his writing style. This one is about a young artist who's trying to create, and he decides to go out of town, leave the city, and go to the countryside of Japan, and ends up staying at this local inn where he meets the daughter of the innkeeper and starts to fall in love with her. And he's also trying to be an artist while trying to be, as he puts it, non-emotional. So there's a little bit of philosophicalness to this book. And to me, it's a little silly to claim you're non-emotional. Because I think that's almost impossible to do when it comes to art. Because you always put emotion into art. At least in my opinion. I don't think you can create art without putting emotion into it. I think that's impossible. But again, that's just my opinion. The author, I read in the introduction about the author that a lot of these books have, that the author does seem to put his opinions on Europe and European art into this book, into his main character, his narrator. And I don't know if you can make the case of this being part of the culture or being part of, or maybe that the author was trying to get a certain idea about the love interest, but I just didn't like how we didn't really get to know her that well. But maybe that was probably the point. It's probably because we were seeing her through the eyes of the main character and all the other characters in the village and their opinions of her. And that's probably why that she's the way she is. Or at least that's how she's portrayed in this book, that there's mystery and the things that she says are seen as silly or nonsensical, or they just don't understand her. I would think it'd be interesting to get her perspective on these events. Which there's a lot of times where I'm always thinking that, about characters. It's like, I would love to get their perspective on their situation, on the conflict and everything. So I don't know if it's a good or bad thing or not, but like I said, maybe that's the point. That's probably the point. But anyway, either way, I like this author's writing style. I will read more of his work. I have one more one of his novels that I actually own right now, so I'm gonna try to get some other books of his. In the information on the author, there is a list, I think, or at least it mentions some books that I can look up, or I can just do a Google search. But anyway, this is really good. he's also considered the Natsumi. This is the author, Natsumi Soki. He is the author. He's considered the author of modern Japanese literature. In case you're interested, that little tidbit. So those are the books I finished. And the books I'm currently reading are, and this one I already mentioned, which in the last update video, which is This Earth of Mankind, which the title is referenced throughout the book. And actually I kept telling you guys in both times I mentioned this book in videos, I was thinking Japan because Japanese made me think of Japan, but actually this book takes place in Indonesia. Not Japan, but Indonesia. And it's during when the Dutch were colonized the Indonesians. And so the book explores colonization, and our main character, Mink, he comes from a wealthy family, and they, I think his dad is like a merchant or something, if I remember correctly, and he is sent to a particular school, let's say, for sake of argument, a prep school, where he can get a European education. So he's very smart, highly educated, but he's also considered a native Javanese. So he's very much caught between the two. And he ends up taking a little, I guess in a way, kind of like a spring break or something. And his schoolmate tells him about this man and his mistress, his concubine girlfriend, and they have 2 kids, a son and a daughter, and that he met the daughter and her son, and he tells him that for this girl will be perfect for Mink, because Mink can be a little, like, he has some high standards. And they go to a party, and he does end up falling for the girl, and he is charmed by the mom. The mom is charmed by him and really likes him. And the mom kind of has a goal for her daughter to marry well, but not just marry well, but marry someone she loves, her daughter loves. And because she herself was sold by her father to the guy who is her daughter's father, and as his concubine, and before he was good to her, he was kind to her, or as kind as you can be when you're being sold to someone. You're being owned by someone, essentially. But then she ends up finding some stuff about him that she is disgusted by and disturbed by, and he ends up basically disappointing her. So, and her son, her oldest child, ends up siding with his father. But he still kind of wants his mother's love, or at least he wants, like, he's a very complicated character. He's a very, the son, is just a very messed up character, but very complicated. And when Mink comes, her daughter and Mink fall in love and everything, although there's something that he says later about her, he thinks about her, which is that she's a crybaby, which really annoyed me. I did not appreciate him calling her crybaby. And the girl's brother, his name is Robert, he does not like Mink. He looks down on Mink and feels threatened by Mink. Because his status, he feels like his status in the family is already fragile. Because his dad's not around. And his mom just, is like, get out of my sight. You sided with your father. You're just as disgusting as he is. And he does, develop the mentality of natives are not worth the dirt on my shoes kind of mentality. And that's one of the things why, because he keeps reminding Mink that he's a native, that he's not worth anything. So that's this book. And then we have, so as you guys know, this is my second reading of this. This is Assassin's Apprentice. And as you can see, I'm almost done with it. I haven't read it this morning yet. I focused on This Earth of Mankind this morning. But anyway, so this book, I read a chunk of this yesterday, and it was a chunk where I was getting kind of frustrated with the characters and really annoyed by them. But Fitz, I feel so bad for him right now. Everyone expects so much from him, and everyone is putting so much pressure on him. And he's trying to prove his worth and prove that he's not a bastard, that he's worth the powers of the skill, and that he can't use them. And like everyone is so, constantly either reminds him that he's a bastard or that he's a shameful and he better not shame his biological father. That's how Burke is. Like Burke, he's still afraid of Fitz using the wit because Fitz ends up forming a bond with a new dog that he got from his father's wife, who kind of decided to take Fitz on and kind of take him in and everything and mentor him a little bit. And so Burke is so afraid of him using this power because they believe that you'll become more beast than man. He's so afraid of what's going to happen with Fitz and that, you're going to be shameful, which funnily enough, the guy who's teaching them the skill, Gallon, also kind of has that mentality of you're a bastard, you're not worth it, you're going to shame your father. He has this overzealous feeling about chivalry, Fitz's father. And he's like, you aren't worth the dirt on your father's feet. And, but he's being forced to teach him the skill. So he is constantly pushing this kid, bullying him in his mind to get him to give up. Because Fitz does show a little bit at the skill, a little ability with the skill. But then he ends up failing because he can't reach his full potential with it. And now I secretly think it's really Gallon who pushed him so much that he was never able to do it. But then Burke thinks that it's the wit, because he does realize that Fitz is using the wit. Granted, he's 14 years old, he's alone, he doesn't have anybody except for you guys who are a bunch of adults. You're like fathers, but you're not equal friends. The only friend he has is Molly, but she's older than him by a few years, and he can't go out and hang out with her as much as he wants to. And he feels like she sees him that, you're just a kid, you're a little boy. And so this kid is lonely. His only companions are his dog, his current dog, whose name escapes me at the moment. And he really likes doing his job as a stable hand, but Burke, when he realized that, you're using the wit, you're so shameful, and how dare you, you're going to become more beast than me, and why couldn't you listen to me, and he just shoves him aside. And Fitz has already been, I think he experiences depression. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I think he goes through depression. And he ends up, and he's already been, briefly he was cast out by Shade at one point because Shade wanted him to do something that he could not bring himself to do it, which was steal an item from King Shrewd. He just couldn't bring himself. He felt that it was just wrong, and he couldn't do it, even though it was Shade constantly told him, it's okay, you're not going to get in trouble, you're being tested, it's an experiment. And he's like, but he can't do it. So Shade is like, well then, if you're not gonna, you're a waste of my time, go away. And it really affects Fitz, because he also liked working with Shade. And of course Shade did eventually take him because he saw what it did to him. So hopefully Burke, I don't remember if he does or not, but I know Burke is still in his life in the second book, but I hope he sees what this does to Fitz, because Fitz, I think he sees both Shade and Burke as father figures. He becomes attached to them, even if he doesn't always agree with them with everything. But there's so much pressure put on this kid, and he's still a kid. Yes, he's 14 years old at this point, but he is still a vulnerable kid who has been bullied and is treated like he's worthless because he happens to be a bastard, which he cannot control that. He can't control that his father hooked up with this other woman. He has no control of it. At least the woman who's married to his father, who was married to his father, she has forgiven. She is not mad at him anymore because she knows she can't blame this kid because she's not stupid. She knows that he is still just a kid. He cannot control his birth, but other people don't seem to think so. And people, because of course they can't take. He's the only one they can take it out on. Especially if they worship chivalry, which it seems like both Galen and Burke worship chivalry, which I'm wondering if there's a rivalry between them because obviously there's a little bit of tension between the two of them. I mean, a lot of tension. So I'm wondering if they both had this zealous love they had this overzealous love for Apprentice chivalry. I don't know yet, but the way they treat Fitz, the way they respond to Fitz in different ways, to me feels like an overzealous relationship with chivalry. It's like, God forbid, Fitz is not a perfect shining example of his father when he's already considered a bastard. So how is he supposed to be the shining representative of his father? Especially, and why should he? His father basically abandoned him. And it's all for image purposes. And, I'm ashamed. Well, maybe you shouldn't have slept with his mom. But yeah, so far, I'm all on Fitz's side. I feel bad for this kid. I just want to give him a hug. I don't know how people felt about him in this first book, if they were annoyed with him in the first book or not, but I'm not annoyed with him. I feel bad for him. But anyway, so those are my thoughts so far on this book. I'm almost done with it. I'll read a couple chapters today, and then I am working tomorrow, so I probably won't get to read until my 15-minute break, and even then I don't get that far. I'll be able to read a little bit throughout the day. I'll read, before I go to work, and then I'll read during my 15-minute break, but usually I only get through, maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get through another page. I'll get through, 2 pages. And then I'll read, I don't know if I'll read when I get home or not. We'll see, because by the time I get home from work, I'm the last thing I want to do is read. I just want to look at YouTube videos or something, or watch TV. So this might not be read until I go to bed. But I am also I'm not very far in this book either. I'm probably at the halfway point in this book. But I'm probably going to read a little bit more this evening or this afternoon. So those are my current reads. Now let's talk about my more recent purchases. And then I got some stuff, non-reading content to talk about. Okay, so first I did, so the elementary school across from us, they reset up the little free library, which I'm excited about. I don't know if I told you guys that, but it's been set up again. They rebuilt it earlier this year. And I was very excited because I was able to put a couple things in there. I don't have a lot of little kids books. I don't even have middle grade books. But I have, but it also has books for adults for when parents drop off the kids as well. So it's a mix of kids books and adult books, which is fine. I mean, I could see where my mom was saying she felt like they should just have kids books. But I mean, they already, because it's the elementary school. But you know what? I think it's also their thing along the lines of, well, parents, when they drop off the kids, they might want to get reading material too. Or if they have to wait for the kids, then they can quickly go out there and grab a book from there. Although, in that line, you might not want to jump out of your car. But I guess if you're, parking your car, then, which that's more prone to happen in the afternoon. So I did put some books in there. And then I went ahead and they're gone. So someone took them, which thankfully. But I recently got a book from there, and I did put, and it's more of an adult book I put in there. But like I said, it has a mix of adult books and kids books in there. So I saw this one was in there as well. And I used to own a copy of this book originally, but then I decided to donate it because I wasn't sure if I was going to read it. But I'm going to give it another shot because, I didn't even attempt to read it last time. I just didn't think I would be into it, but I'm going to give it another shot because I do like this author's writing. That is Stephen King, and it's The Outsider, which was made into a TV show, I think, starring Jason Bateman. Yeah, soon to be an HBO series. I never watched it because I never read the book. But now I have it. I saw it there and was like, let me just go ahead and get this another shot and actually read it this time. Crack it open before I decide. So I got this, and I ended up putting the book I put in there, and it's definitely an adult book. Is The God of the Woods. I ended up putting that in there, and luckily I was able to fit it in there because I go for morning walks, and I walk by the elementary school, and I took a detour and went over there to drop it, and it would be kind of a pain if I couldn't fit in there, and then I had to carry the book the whole time. That would be kind of annoying. I mean, I guess I could have turned around because it's not, but there's still some distance between my house and the little free library, so it would have been, I would have to turn around, and then so I didn't want to have to deal with that, but I did, luckily I was able to get in there. But this is, I don't know a lot about what this is, but I'm going to go read I don't remember, I should say I don't remember what it's about. So I'm going to go and read the back. A living nightmare has come to Flint City, Oklahoma, and this does not take place in Maine. A lot of it, but of course not all his books takes place in Maine, but an 11-year-old boy is found brutally murdered in a local park. An unspeakable crime that rocks local law enforcement to its core as the most heinous atrocity anyone there has ever witnessed. Equally stunning is the identity of the prime suspect, Terry Maitland, one of Flint City's most popular citizens, as well as Little League coach, English teacher, and devoted husband and father. Despite Detective Ralph Anderson, whose own son Maitland once coached, orders a quick and very public arrest. Multiple eyewitnesses and irrefutable evidence mean an ironclad case. Until the investigation and expands and horrifying new details begin to emerge, Terry Maitland seems like a nice guy. But is he wearing another face? When the answer is revealed, it will shock you as only a master storyteller Stephen King can. And I think there's other world stuff going on in this book, I think that's what the impression I've gotten on this when people talk about this book. But yeah, reading that back, reading the back again, I'm a little bit more excited about it. And also, although I still gotta read Wizard and Glass. I gotta get back to that one first. And then I have also started The Talisman. And I did talk about reading Fairy Tale, but I still haven't got back to it. So, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's very hard to, when it comes to Stephen King, because there's so many Stephen King books that I haven't read. I keep thinking about The Stand as well, so I don't know what I'm going to read. So, I got that one, and like I said, I put The God in the Woods in the little free library. So, I won't have that to show you guys when I do a final wrap-up of the year. Okay, and then we have, so my latest thrift book purchase was, we have a translation of Gilgamesh, and this is, translated by David Fury, and I didn't realize it was so short, so I keep thinking, is this an abridged version or something? But this was in my mythology class. Our professor mentioned this book as the first epic that was ever translated or turned into, written down. And it was originally or it was the first one that was it was documented and put into on tablets, but it was discovered later, it was come to light later. So this is a new translation of it. It actually has the notes in this one. Someone, annotated this. And apparently they're not very fond of it. They did not like it because of the way the book... I mean, maybe they did like it, and they just didn't like how the book wrote about women. Although, no, it says, this chapter is disgusting and horrible. Which to me is I think is very... Oh, well, I guess, yeah, they don't like it, because in big, bold print, they say, this book does not make sense and is disrespecting a woman's body. And, like, I think... And... yeah, this person is very vocal about their, really annotating, which I think, I love annotations, but I think these ones are, like, in a way, amusing because it's, I'm not saying, as a woman reader, I'm not saying, well, boys will be boys. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, I think it's funny because just, of course they're gonna, like, sadly, that's how a lot of... I'm not surprised that this would probably not have write women well, and it's probably not an epic that women, like a lot of modern women, might not enjoy this. Because won't like it, because if it's true, if these annotations, they probably are, but it's like, I'm not surprised because of how, sadly, there were men that saw women just like as, jewelry on their arm, like women that took on women as like their pets. And it's, it would be disgusting, but it's also not surprising. And I don't know if this person was surprised or not when they read this. And, this is, of course, their opinions on it, and that's valid. And I'm not saying it makes it good or bad. It's just, it's very interesting and kind of entertaining. This person was very vocal about how they don't like how this book treats women. And like I said, I'm not surprised. I believe it. I believe it probably does treat women. The characters in the story probably treat these women horribly and disgustingly. It's just interesting to read someone's, like, very vocal and very, It's like, it says, this is the worst book. The goddess Ishtar is disgusting and horrible. Ugh, gross. And Kino also insults, disrespecting a woman. Tiana are for girls. It's like, but like I said, to me, it's not a surprise. And does it make it objectively, does this make it objectively a bad book? It's like, I feel like that's a hard thing to answer, because on the one hand, as a female reader reading something like this, it's like, of course you're not going to like how women are written and how these people write women, and that's why I think a lot of women are more prone to read books written by women. And this was probably originally recorded by a male. And it's about men, from what I've heard about it. But it's also part of the canon. And yeah, I'm not saying I have to read... And no, I don't have to read everything that's considered part of the Western canon, or the canon at all, but I want to, because I'm kind of curious about it all. Like, why is it part of the canon? Why do people think this is above reproach? Why do people consider this the ultimate thing you should read? Now, of course, this one was the first probably written story, because it was, but And maybe that's definitely a big part of it. But it's just really funny and weird. Like, it's like, as a woman, should I not like, am I not allowed to enjoy this? Am I not allowed to, if I do read it and actually find it entertaining? That the whole way we're like, of course, saying, oh, well, you're desensitized to it, or, oh, that's the patriarchy manipulates. It's like, no, I probably won't like how the women are written. And I'm allowed to criticize it, but as this person, the person who annotated this book is allowed to think this book is disgusting, the story is disgusting, it bastardizes women, and it's disrespectful about women and everything. Like, I'm not saying they're not, it's just, I just think it's funny that, how strongly they are vocal as a female reader, how strongly they talk about, hopefully what I'm saying here won't get misinterpreted or think, oh, you're thinking it's okay for men to write this kind of stuff. But you know what? I had no control. This was written before, way before time. It was written originally on a tablet. So, and no, I'm not talking about so on an actual piece of stone, and then eventually translated. So, I think it was one of the first epics. But I'm going to stop talking. Hopefully nothing will, I'm not taking a big risk by sharing my honest opinions about this. But anyway, so that is the Epic of Gilgamesh. Either way, I'm still going to read it though, because I bought it and I'm going to read it. Because I think it's worth at least reading for myself. And then the other book I got was a recommendation from, not a direct recommendation to me. He was just recommending books about like Eastern Europe, and that is The Door by Magda Sebezzo. I don't know how to say her last name, but anyway, this is about two women, and one of them is, Magda is a writer, educated, married to an academic. But she has a relationship, even though she's married, she has a relationship with a Hungarian communist. Oh, no, actually, it says, on and off, public speaker with an on and off again relationship with Hungary's communist authorities. Wait. Oh, okay, so Emergence is, she is but she has she has this peasant, the other main character is Emergence. She's a peasant, she's illiterate, she's impassive, she's older, she lives alone, and she's Magda's housekeeper. And Magda relies on her. As it says, she becomes indispensable. And it's about their relationship and their bond with each other. And this is also again, one of my favorite publishers, the NYRB publisher, New York Public. Oh, is there something in there? Oh, so there is it's the person's, there's a bookmark, and then there's their receipt. So that's funny. And then there's the bookmark. So that's funny that's in there. But I am really excited to read this because I've never written an East European book before, so this should be really fun as well. And obviously, I don't have as much to say about this one as I did about Gilgamesh. Okay, and then we have those, and then we have my most recent purchase was from the Atlas. I went yesterday, and first I saw 12th Night. I tried to stick to 2 books, but that didn't happen. I ended up going again, getting 3. So first I got 12th Night, and it had the Folgers edition because which actually I've seen these Folgers at the independent bookstore, the country bookshop, but unfortunately they are the mass market versions, which although those are going away soon, those were like they're talking about getting rid of those. A lot of people are not happy with that because mass markets, they're cheaper and they're small and so easy to travel with, and they're cheaply made. They're cheaper books, so I think a lot of people are like, no, don't get rid of them. You can't get rid of mass markets because they're so convenient to get. So I guess I can't blame people. I just don't care for them anymore. But I don't want them to get rid of them either. And I don't know off the top of my head. I don't remember what this one is about. But I'm glad there was a Folgers version of it because I'm slowly trying to collect the Folgers as well as the Barnes & Noble editions of the Shakespeare's classics. I want to get another version of Macbeth because right now I have one that's kind of an easier one to read, and then so I'm hoping, and I did put on my Amazon wish list the Barnes & Noble one because no, I don't have a Barnes & Noble, so if I want to get the Barnes & Noble, yes, I'm going to have to use Amazon. And yes, I know thrift books, but you know what, the ones what they show on thrift books isn't going to necessarily be the exact edition you want. You don't always get, which I know it's not the end of the world if I don't get, but you know what, I like these. I'm not the only one who has edition preferences with books. So, and there's a reason, and what's appealing about these editions, and is that they have all this extra stuff in there. And yes, and most editions do have extra, stuff like notes and background information and all that kind of stuff. So it's not just about that, but I also like the aesthetic of both those, both the Barnes & Noble and this one, so. But yeah, I can't really tell you what this play is about. I don't remember what this one is about. But, it's funny though, this is actually, Folger is based close to where I used to live, which I find really funny, so. So there's that. And I almost did get a book that I saw Emma Angelina, a book that she had. And I almost bought it, but then I decided not to buy that one, and, it will probably be gone next time I go, so maybe this is a, waste. I should have got it, but I didn't get it. This is the latest bookmark that I ended up getting from them. These, I have so many of these that I probably shouldn't be getting them every time, but someone made these, so I always feel like I should pick one up whenever I go there. I don't always, though. Every so often I don't get one, but I ended up picking this one because I think I like the colors of this one. But I'm curious how they make these. Like, is it from, a card or something? I'm kind of curious, but. Okay, so then we got this one, and I've seen this one multiple times whenever I go there, which is Rosa, by Jonathan Rabb, and he's the author of Second Son and The Shadow and Light. And this is a bit of a detective thriller, which is funny because normally I don't get like those, but I thought I might try this one. And plus, I didn't, like I said, if I just got this book, it'll be only $4 anyway. So, this takes place in 1918 during the Socialist Revolution. So I'm going to go ahead and read the back. November 1918, a socialist revolution is sweeping across Germany, wreaking havoc on a war-torn Berlin. Amid the ruin of the city slums, 4 women are found dead, all with identical scars on their backs. Detective Inspector Nikolai Hofner, Nikolai, I think that's how you say it, Nikolai Hofner, and his assistant Hans Feich are baffled by the killings, and when another body is discovered, the case takes on an ominous and unexpected turn. The 5th victim is none other than Rosa Luxemburg, a leader of the suppressed socialist uprising. Now, Polpo, political police, are interested in the murders, and the mystery of Rosa's death leads Hofner into the heart of the Weimar's political turmoil, where ideas can be fatal. So it's just even though I'm not a detective story or thriller fan all the time, sometimes they sound kind of cool, kind of interesting. Okay, and then the last one I got is a bit of a vampire story. And it was actually, I remember when it was adapted. Like, I remember it coming out as a movie. But this is Let Me In by John Lindquist. Which I guess, I wonder if this author is, oh yeah, he's a Swedish author. Okay. So this is was originally translated. And he's been compared to, he's Sweden's equivalent to Stephen King, apparently. Okay, so the back says, Let Me In is a terrifying yet moving tale of 2 lonely adolescents who stand together against the world. It begins with the horrific discovery of the body of a teenage boy emptied of blood. Our 12-year-old hero is personally hoping that revenge has come at long last. Revenge for all the bad things the bullies at school do to him. Day after day, while he's fascinated by the murder, it is not the most important thing in his life. A new girl has moved in next door, a girl who has never seen a Rubik's Cube before, but who could solve it at once. They become friends, and something more. But there's something wrong with her, something odd, and she only comes out at night. But yeah, I saw this, and it was another. This was there's another vampire story I almost bought by Dan Simmons, but I ended up not getting that one, obviously. In the way, I know I shouldn't do this. I try not to, but sometimes looking at reviews and actually reading the reviews on Goodreads does help me narrow it down. Because I try to, it's not like I'm going to get like 20 or 30, 10, 20 books. Not that I grab them, but I can't get like more than 3 books. I mean, I should say more than 4 because I have bought 4 before. It still adds up. So sometimes looking at Goodreads really helps me narrow it down. And actually reading the reviews. And the way the reviews talked about Dan Simmons' book, I decided, you know what, I'm not gonna, because I didn't even finish that other book that he wrote, The Terror. I started it, but I ended up not finishing it. I just couldn't. I kind of lost interest. It almost felt too long. And I don't mind reading longer books, obviously. It's just, if it's, it just kind of depends. But his, I think, was also a vampire story, I think. But the way people talked about it is like, I don't know. So I ended up not getting this one, but I grabbed this one at the last minute. Because I know it's a vampire story and has been adapted, and I think Mike from Mike's Book Reviews has mentioned it, I think. But it's another one of those books that I've looked at and I thought about getting, and, And also, I like that it's kids, that the vampire is a kid. A little girl. Like, I like that idea. It's like a darker version of The Little Vampire. That movie that came out with Justin Lipnicki from the, 90s, early 2000s. Where he's a little lonely little boy. His family just moved into the community and there's vampires next door to him, I think. If I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I watched the movie. And I might have only watched it like once, maybe twice. I should look for that one. See if that's on Disney Plus or something. I don't know if it was considered a Disney movie, because if it's not a Disney movie, then it's probably not there. But like I said, I like that it's that our vampire's a little girl. I think that can be kind of fun, you know. Like, I think it's fun when you see kids go all psycho and evil. Like, I love the movie Orphan, you know, and the fact that, granted, she wasn't really a kid. Spoiler alert. And then there's also, and like Wednesday Addams, you know, when she's in the kids in the Addams Family movies that came out in the 90s. And then I'm trying to think of another. What was the other one? There's another one. Oh, Interview with a Vampire. The vampire, the girl, I cannot think of her name. She was a kid at the time when she got turned. She was really little. So it's also very disturbing that this is a little kid, and in her mind, she is growing up and becoming an adult. That's why in the new adaptation of her, Claudia is her name, Claudia. In the new adaptation, she is actually played by a teenage girl instead of a little girl. Instead of like a young woman that's close to adulthood plays her. And she's aged up to at least be 16. Because the way, you know, Anne Rice wrote her, she's has adult desires, even though she looks like a child. But anyway, so now on to, before I forget, let's talk about non-book related things. And if you're not interested in non-book stuff, then you can cut off now. Hopefully you won't, but if you're not interested, that's fine. Okay, so I'm still all about Jonathan Freeman. Like, in fact, he also inspired me to watch, look up stuff on Shiny Time Station. There is a video somewhere on YouTube that talks about what happened to the show, why it disappeared from the media, what happened to it. Like, I don't know if it got canceled or something, but now when they have Thomas, they have it as a cartoon, because, you know, I have kids in my life, so sometimes I've, you know, caught glimpses of Thomas the Tank Engine. But there was also, I didn't come across the what happened to the show video, but I did come across the cast reunion panels that were on the internet. And so I started watching those last night, but it was almost midnight, and I was trying not to stay up until 1 a.m. So I started those, but then put them on my watch later list. So I'll come back to those today at some point. I don't know if while I'm uploading, maybe I'll watch them while I'm uploading these videos. But anyway, so it was kind of fun to listen, because I don't recall the show enough to get details exactly, but as soon as I watch clips and hear about it, it's like I remember it, not thoroughly, but I remember enough to know that I did watch it. And it was such a heartwarming show. It was so much fun. It was basically, you have a train station. You first see inside the train station, they have, you know, it's the lives of these kids that come through the train station, interact with the adults, and learn life lessons and hear stories by the train conductor, who's this little tiny little man. And but then you go from there to the actual train tracks and where the trains are, outside of the physical building, where you see Thomas and his friends, and they're not cartoons in this case, because like in the 80s and the 90s, they didn't, you know, they had a different I don't know if it was claymation or puppets. Like, I know they use puppets. They would use puppets where they had the jukebox band, which was puppets, where you got to see inside of the jukebox, and people would put quarters in. You would see the quarters going through the jukebox, and the band would play the song, or, you know, they would play what they want if they didn't know the song. And Jonathan Freeman was one of the puppeteers. And I remember enjoying the show, and it kind of makes me sad that now when it's Thomas the Tank Engine, it's just a silly little cartoon. No disrespect to kids and parents who, love that version. But the one I grew up with, of course, was this one, Shining Time Station. It makes me sad. I miss it. And, I want my nephews and niece, I want them to get introduced to Thomas via that. But, now they're growing up and they're probably aging out of that. But it was so nostalgic. And I remember as soon as I heard that he was one of the puppeteers, the guy who voiced Jafar voiced a puppet and sang the songs for the puppet on that show, a show that I vaguely remember. It was exciting, and so I was like, I wanted to at some point get around to seeing if I could find stuff on the show, and maybe if there were episodes on YouTube, would watch it. So, and there are people have uploaded episodes. I mean, I don't know what the quality is, but so I started those, but yeah, and then another Jonathan Freeman project that I watched where he's only in, like, as far as I can tell so far, he's only in one episode, is a show called Hell of a Boss. And it's already developed a cult. It sounds like, I get these inklings that it already developed a cult following. Because I've seen people comments about the show and everything. And it's so much fun, but it's not for kids. It's just because it's animation does not mean it's for kids. It is clearly an adult show. It has some gore in it. It has some violence in it. So it's definitely an R rating show. So it's not for kids. It's basically it's as if HE double hockey sticks. I don't know if I could say that word on here or not. I mean, maybe I'm not big enough channel to have to worry about that. But it's basically, they treat that place as if it's as its own city and its own bureaucracy. Basically, the main character works for a company that him and his team collect souls and start, provoke people to go downstairs instead of going upstairs. And they're short, quick episodes, they're 30 minutes long, and it's so funny if you get the humor, if you can appreciate that kind of morbid humor. Of course, I liked Ren and Stimpy back in the day when I was a kid, so I clearly don't mind morbid humor. It's so funny and outrageous. It's just plain crazy, and in Jonathan Freeman voices the prince of this place, his father. And we have a whole episode. The first episode of season 2 is basically him in a flashback of him when he was a kid, and when he meets the main character of the show, Blitzo, I think his name is. The prince's name is Stolas, and we meet and it's when Prince Stolas and Blitzo meet when they're kids. And they end up having, their relationship goes beyond friendship as adults. That's all I'm going to say. And it's outrageous humor. It's kind of gory, and it's really fun. It's clearly R-rated, and it's fun. It's not for kids. Again, I repeat, it's not for kids. But yeah, it's really funny. If you're into, you can appreciate that kind of stuff and don't mind that kind of stuff. You're not squeamish or, that is bad, if you don't. But anyway, so I'm currently watching that show. I'm already started season 2 last night, but decided to stop and not continue and just watch some YouTube videos, because I did find another channel who, on YouTube, that watches movies while providing commenting on the movies. And she's basically been watching, I don't know how old those videos are, so I don't know when she was started this project, but she was watching old Disney movies, and before the 90s, and because it had been so long since she watched them, so kind of refreshing her memory, and commenting on them, and of course she doesn't show the whole movie, just shows parts of it, because doesn't want to get her in trouble, copyright issues. It's endearing, it's fun, it's funny in a way too. It's a more wholesome humor. because it's just her reactions, and she gets emotional. Like I just watched her video on Dumbo, and I remember that is a very emotional movie. And then she talked about, she watched Pinocchio and Bambi, and it's fun to see someone else's perspective on those movies. I mean, that's why I like these videos, watching someone else's perspective, especially if it's a first time watching this movie and just watching their reaction to it, these movies that I grew up and watched. Like I watched people's first time watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I watched when that was Back to the Future, first time watching Back to the Future, first time watching like some of those 90s Disney movies like Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast. It's really fun, especially when it's a first time watching video. It's very amusing seeing other people's reactions, especially because rewatching Aladdin for the first time in years, and being reminded how much I loved the movie back in the day, and just seeing how other people, because there are things that I didn't think about when I watched it as a kid that I think about now. I mean, not like adult stuff, but just things that I didn't notice. I have to not notice, like I said, like for instance, when Jafar turns into disguise himself as the old man, and realizing that basically the mouth was attached to the beard, because it's like, I'm watching him, seeing the old man, him in disguise as the old man, and the teeth are really messed up and weird looking. I'm like, those aren't Jafar's teeth. Like, his teeth are nice. They're not like that. He doesn't even have a gold tooth. And then when he takes off the beard, he takes off the mouth as part of the beard. I'm like, oh. And I just got a kick out of that. But anyway. So now, like I said, yes, I'm still all about Jonathan Freeman, but right now I'm kind of gone back onto the Christopher Lloyd train. And basically binging, because he was a big part of my childhood, even more so than Jonathan Freeman, because, I remember remember the trailer of course, Back to the Future. Like, my dad introduced me that movie when we were on the ride at Universal before they got rid of it, and they replaced it. Which makes me kind of sad, because that was such a fun ride, and it, such a nostalgia for it, because it introduced me to the movie franchise. And how I watched the third one for the first, the third one was the first one I ever watched of that trilogy. Because I think it was the only VHS that they had at Blockbusters. If you're a 90s kid, you know what Blockbusters is. Although Blockbusters was around even in the early 2000s. But I remember watching, like, so the third one I watched for the first time, and I was probably a little confused at the time, because there were, it goes right from the events, the second movie ends on a cliffhanger, and goes into, so there were aspects of, so the beginning was a little confusing, if you're watching it for the first time, and you're watching it without having watched movies 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 were a mystery to me, until I finally saw them, and I, looking for them on TV and stuff like that. And then eventually when DVDs came into the picture, I bought the DVD. Because I could only watch it when it came on TV. And of course, it's not like it would come on TV on a regular basis. So I got it. And I always constantly, I will do rewatch. I have rewatched it multiple times. And for the first time, I watched the third movie twice in a row. Because I'm like, I just watched 1 and 2, so it's okay if I watch the third one twice in a row. Because that's probably my favorite one. Because I love the Western setting. I like the romance. I think it's even funnier than the other two. People might disagree with me on that one. But it's just such a, in the epic train scene, in the climax of the movie and everything, it was such an exciting movie. And, but anyway, so there's that. But of course, like, I remember when Angels in the Outfield came out and seeing the trailer for that, and I remember watching that a little bit, and that Christopher Lloyd had the part of an angel called Al in that movie. It's like, in case you don't know what Angels in the Outfield is, it's about the baseball team, the Angels, And I don't know if they're meant to be the real Angels because I don't know if there's really a baseball team called the Angels. I'm just like, I'm not a baseball person. And this kid who was an orphan, he was kind of abandoned by his dad. His dad makes a passing comment that, when the kid is like, well, when are we going to be a family again? When are you coming back for me? And the dad tells him, well, I'll tell you what, when the Angels win the pennant, then I'll come back for you. Because the Angels in the movie are really terrible. And the coach is really struggling to be a good coach because he's like losing his temper. And so he's being pressured by his boss and everything to be a better coach. And it's like, how can I be a good coach if the team kind of can't play? So this kid makes praise to God and the angels. He's like, please help the Angels out so that they'll start winning and my dad will come back. And he's played by young Joseph Gordon-Levitt, by the way. And so the Angels show up and help the team play. And the problem is he's the only one who could see them. So his friend, the other little boy, and the coach, played by Danny Glover, can't see the Angels. And Danny Glover's character, the coach, is really struggling with believing this kid, but somehow this team is doing these miraculous things to win. Like jumping up into the air and magically catching the ball, or hitting the ball so hard that the bat breaks. And I don't mean jumping, like they're actually floating. This player ends up floating in the air and catching the ball. And so he starts to think, well, maybe this kid is seeing angels. Maybe they are real. And it's a movie about, like, not just about baseball, but it's about faith, I think. And like I say, Christopher Lloyd plays the head angel, and he says, "Call me Al." And and it's I definitely cry in that movie. It's so good. It's such a sweet story. Even if you're not a big baseball fan, I think you could still enjoy it. But then I also watched, and of course, I love The Addams Family, the two movies that came out in the 90s, and Christopher Lloyd guest starred in the Wednesday series, playing a professor at the school that Wednesday attends. And it's like the series, and he plays Uncle Fester in those Addams Family movies in the 90s. And it was really cool because he himself says that he loved that character. Like, he was around when the comics came out, the original version of the Addams Family. And he grew up with them, and he was a big fan of Uncle Fester. And then he gets a call, and like, do you want to play this character? And so I love both those movies. I finally recently, like last year, the year before, I bought them on DVD, on Blu-ray and also there's trying to think what else. Oh, and I recently rewatched Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where he plays the bad guy. He plays the antagonist, Judge Dune. And that movie's just good in general. That movie's just hilarious. That's like, I love that movie. That is a classic, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And then, of course, I loved Anastasia growing up. And My Favorite Martian, a remake movie that was based on a TV show, which I don't have access to. I don't know how I could watch that. Which the TV show is just like one of these things where it was fun, it was quirky, it was zany, not like the best show ever. Like, if people don't like it, that's fine. Personally, it's not one of those shows I'm super attached to. One movie that I'm attached to, I find it funny, entertaining. And then there's this Disney Channel movie called Camp Nowhere, which was really funny. And I remember watching that one and really enjoying that, and just being really, it's a movie basically about a bunch of 12 to 14-year-olds who decide that they don't want to go to the camps that their parents want to send them to. So they all gather together and create a group of friends. They gather together, and then other kids join them, and they find a way to create their own camp. They find a location, and they hire this guy that was a former drama teacher. at a local, I don't know if it was a high school, and they have him pretend to be the counselor, the head of the camp, although he doesn't have to supervise them. They pay him, and he is played by Christopher Lloyd. And it's a really funny movie. There is a little bit of romance in it because there's a woman who's a nurse that lives close by. Like, the main kid gets an injury, so they have to go get a professional look at his injury. And his character and Christopher Lloyd's character meets her and has a little bit of infatuation with her, a little crush on her. And they kind of have to lie to her, essentially. And, like, they do a lot of 90s movies where characters have to tell lies and stuff. They have to keep secrets, and then eventually someone finds out. And it's and it's a really funny kids getting into trouble kind of thing. It's ridiculous. But it's funny. It's a great, the only Christopher Lloyd things I haven't seen. I never saw One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And I've seen bits and pieces of Clue. And then, of course, Taxi was not. I wasn't around in the 80s, so I didn't know about Taxi. Of course, there are movies from the 80s that I've gotten access to. Now, this is just a TV show, but I've seen clips from it. I've heard a lot about it, so it's kind of been in the background, But it's just funny that I don't really think about it, then I realize, oh my god, this actor I've seen so many times. I mean, I was already a fan of Christopher Lloyd, but it's like, I didn't really think about, actually, he's been in a lot of movies that I enjoy. And not always small parts. Like, sometimes, actually major roles. And he's really good at playing that zany character. But funnily enough, the actor himself is very reserved and very shy. That's the impression you get when you see him in interviews. He's a little bit more reserved than his co-stars. So that's always, it's kind of also just like how Thomas F. Wilson, who plays Biff, is actually a really nice, kind, loving person. In fact, during the one scene in the first movie where he attempts to go after Lorraine in an inappropriate way, he's talking about how during filming he was so apologetic. He was like, I'm so sorry I'm doing this, I hope you're okay. And she kept having her mind. Leah Thompson was like, it's okay, we're doing a movie. But like, he felt so disgusted with it. He didn't even want to play a bully, but it was a job, so, for him. But it's just, I love that he's actually a really sweet, kind person. That he was, and he actually, so the guy who played in the antagonist, who becomes Superman's arch enemy in Superman, the show Smallville is about when Superman's a teenager, and he ends up I can't remember the character name, but that character, his arch enemy, Superman's arch enemy, he grows up with that character. Those two grow up together in Smallville, and so the actor who played him has a talk show, one of those, a podcast or something, and he interviewed Tom F. Wilson, and they talk about playing that type of character and being completely opposite of who you are as a person, and playing this character that compromises your morals. So that was, but in fact, I think Tom F. Wilson started to get emotional when he was remembering and talking about stuff he had to do in the movie. But anyway, so yeah, it's kind of really fun to re-explore Christopher Lloyd's career, and that I'm from the movies that he's done, that I'm familiar with, that I've watched a bunch of times, and I'd love to meet him. I mean, I'd love to meet the whole Back to the Future cast, as well as the cast of those 3 Disney movies. But anyway, so that's my non-book related update, and I've been talking a long while, so I'm gonna go. And I'm going to upload this and then get some reading, try to get the Assassin's Apprentice read some more, because I do have to go back to work tomorrow. It's not like the day's only halfway done, but it feels like the day goes by so fast. And it's almost 1 o'clock, so if I want to eat some kind of lunch, then probably should eat now. So Um, I will talk to you later, and I hope you're currently enjoying your reading. And the actors I mentioned, are you familiar with the actors I've mentioned? I would love to know. Are you familiar with their work? Did you grow up with them like I did? And also, what are you currently reading? Like I said, I would love to know. Are you familiar with any of the books that I've just talked about? Would love to know that as well. And I will talk to you all later. All right, bye.